So the R rating doesn't change the MCU forever. Rather, it opens doors for the MCU to take more swings.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
Deadpool and Wolverine is finally here, and holy shit. Normally I have some awesome intro about a movie, but to put it simply, this is real ball. Deadpool is finally in the MCU, and with that comes so many Kevin Feige jokes, the ultimate team up, but most unexpectedly, a love letter to comic book movies. There are undoubtedly some essential problems with this film, but it is classic Deadpool. It is a compelling and slightly emotionally resonant story, and though it might feel like nostalgia bait, it is something that feels like at its core a passion-driven film. I want to talk about all of this along with the impact that Deadpool and Wolverine has on the MCU, one that's overall positive, but also raises some red flags, all of that and much, much more. But before we get into it, let me know your thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine in the comments down below, and over 98% of you guys who watch these videos aren't yet subscribed. So if you don't want to miss out on any more reviews or rankings, hit that button. But don't waste any more time, let's get right into it. There's a lot to talk about. But I want to start off with the fact that we might be so back. And that's just because of Deadpool and Wolverine, the titular characters. They are just so back. It's like Deadpool, his character hasn't really changed from the past two movies. And that was one of my biggest worries going in was, yeah, this is a Disney movie. They can say it's rated R. They can say whatever the hell they want. But will Kevin Feige take those massive swings? And he does it here. This isn't some mind-boggling Kang the Conqueror crazy shit that's going on in the MCU. It's not leading to Secret Wars. It's not giving us Doctor Doom. It's not giving us Iron Man back. But that's not really what we need. It tells us an emotionally resonant story using a Wolverine that is played by Hugh Jackman. And might I say, it is one of the best performances Hugh Jackman has given in his entire Fox X-Men career. Hugh Jackman truly puts on a masterclass. Ryan Reynolds, me personally, I'm not tired of the Deadpool shtick. I also have the humor of a middle schooler, so that does explain a lot. But Hugh Jackman is the emotional core to this film, and I think a lot of that is aided by a couple of the cameos, which I'll be talking about their story impact later and how they impact the future of the MCU, but not the cameos specifically. So again, no spoilers in this video, but Wolverine and Deadpool are as awesome as they can possibly be. This is the team up that we were all hoping for and that we all did indeed get. Speaking of Wolverine, I will be reviewing the Wolvussy at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. I have one big problem with this movie, and I'm going to be gushing about it for most of the runtime of this video, so I want to get it out of the way. There is a glaring production flaw with this movie, and that has been present in the overall MCU, which is why I decided to take the MCU angle to Deadpool and Wolverine. There is a big writing problem with this film, and that's something we've seen with a lot of the recent MCU movies, as more and more they feel like a committee-based film. This movie has 6 writing credits, which is absolutely absurd. What the f was going on? And I understand Deadpool movies always take a long time to get off the ground and running, but this, along with, in my opinion, a pretty big and glaring director problem, is my biggest flaw with this movie. I think there are some light story issues, but overall, the production of this, though the final project seems more polished than pretty much everything since we've gotten in like Endgame and Infinity War, I can't help but worry about it and be like, we could have gotten something a little bit bigger and a little bit more ambitious on a set level. And I'll get into specific sets and storytelling methods in just a second here. But again, first of all, 6 writing credits is fuck nuts insane. And second of all, Sean Levy, hate to break it to you, does not really have the sauce. What I mean by that is the action is freaking awesome. Every single moment of the trailers and everything, it's so cool. Like, this is classic Deadpool action. Kind of feels David Leitch-esque in the best ways, but while also innovating on that. The other Sean Levy problem I have with this movie, and maybe it's not a Sean Levy problem, maybe he was forced to do this because I know Spotify was a big part of the marketing for this movie, but I'm not gonna lie to you, it feels like they just shuffled like the top 100 hits of all time and put that into this movie, which isn't like the worst thing in the world, but my brother next to me was counting and there were like truly 8 scenes with needle drops, which is absolutely insane for a movie that's just over 2 hours long. The needle drop at the end of this film is brilliant, if I must say so myself, and they do like a orchestral epic remix of it in the final like concluding moments, which I love. And I also love the opening of this movie. As cringe and stupid as it may be, I really like the opening credits, and that was really, really fun. But I will say, I don't know if this is Sean Levy, I don't know if it's a cinematographer, the action coordinator. The camera movements in this movie have some sauce, I won't even lie to you. There are some dynamic sequences here. There's a dolly one take that's not a dolly zoom, it's a dolly pan, and it is some of the coolest shit I've ever seen. Felt literally like a comic book come to life. And I'm going to repeat that a lot towards the end of this video, but truly this movie made me feel like I was literally reading a comic book that was on the big screen in the best way possible. Another very comic-like sequence in the action of it all was the opening credits. There's a really fun needle drop. Quite an overused song in cinema nowadays, in my opinion, but still a really fun needle drop and a really fun way to do the opening credits. I mean, Deadpool has always had great opening credits, and this is probably the best one, in my opinion, just because, you know, this is new Deadpool in the MCU, and you get a lot of comedy in that regard, but also you get that throwback to Deadpool 1 and 2. Aside from the action itself, though, the biggest, I guess, complaint I have about this movie on just a general, like, the plain movie itself, it's really high stakes in a sense, but it's also really tight storytelling. What I mean by that is there are high stakes in this film, but the sets, the characters, the battles to an extent feel oddly concise, and I think it's because of all of the cameos and them not wanting to spoil this film. I'm not going to give a single detail about the cameos themselves away, but I will say they are all played in an essential way to the plot, meaning that they all have to be kind of tied together in one spot. But anyways, I didn't have a single one of the big cameos leaked, and I think it's why the sets felt so independent. Even the finale of this movie was in this super concise area. It felt epic, it felt big, it felt grand, and it felt threatening. Like, the TVA is a massive part of this story, and the way that the multiverse is tied into this film, again, that all leads into why I think it's such a grand idea and such a grand scope. That forced a lot of these moments in the movie to feel smaller and feel more, I guess, claustrophobic, right? You're going from set to set because they can't be out in the open filming this stuff or else things will get spoiled. And so overall, it was definitely the safest way to go into the movie spoiler free, but it also does harm the pacing in that it feels like a lot of smaller scenes put together with a story through line. The final thing I want to talk about before getting into the overall MCU of it all is the Deadpool-esque ideas, because this movie, in my opinion, wouldn't work nearly as well if not for the first two Deadpool films. And it's not because of Deadpool himself, it's not because of Dopinder the Goat, it's not because of Cable, it's because of Vanessa. Vanessa has always been the core of Deadpool's character in these live action films. Vanessa has always been what Deadpool has fought for, and truly that is the core of this film. Even though she's not in this movie for nearly as long as she is in the first two films, the way that they utilize her flashbacks, these sequences, and the stakes in this movie, the stakes are so, like, multiversal. They're so TVA. They're so prune timeline. You know what I mean? Like, they're grand as it can get. But it's all focused in on losing someone. Whether it's Wolverine, whether it's Deadpool, this is all working because Deadpool 1 does an amazing job of setting up Vanessa and Wade Wilson's characters. Deadpool 2 does an amazing job of propelling that story further. And on top of that, Deadpool 2 does set up this story amazing with obviously all of the Cable and timeline stuff. And I don't think the villain is necessarily as strong as Cable. I guess Cable's not really the villain, he's more just like a main antagonistic figure. But Cable and then the guy in the first film, I'm forgetting his name, like Philip or some shit. Cassandra Nova, as well as the, I guess, secret villainous figure that's not really shown in the marketing. These two characters come together to be the perfect villains for this film. And that's why I genuinely think a lot of people don't like this movie. Like the cinephiles of the world, they're going to complain, oh, the villain isn't interesting at all. To me, the way I personally view it is They chose villains that don't necessarily need to be super fleshed out. We get Cassandra Nova's backstory super quickly. That's all we need. We get this backstory of this other villain antagonistic figure that even the other Deadpool movies do this. The villains aren't a major part of the story. It's mainly about Wade Wilson's personal storyline and him getting back to that. So they do the same thing here, and they don't need to focus on the villains, and they can focus on the emotional and more comic book feeling storytelling, which I absolutely loved. And the final Deadpool-esque idea I have to talk about is the fourth wall breaking. I do think there is significantly more fourth wall breaking in this movie than the first two Deadpool films. And I think it was intentional because fourth wall breaking, first of all, has never been done in an MCU movie, and it's only been done in She-Hulk, which I don't think literally anyone watched except for me and like two other guys in the world. So yeah, he breaks the fourth wall a lot. I think it's because there was a lot of fourth wall jokes to tell, and I think it worked in this movie really. There's literally one in this movie where he grabs the camera, which was the coolest shit ever. But I understand why people don't like it. It does break a lot of tension, but me personally, I found it really interesting. But to kind of get to the overall future of the MCU, how does the R rating change the future of the MCU? And I think it's pretty simple, right? You look at Logan in retrospect, and they don't really tweak with Logan in this movie. I'm not going to talk specifically about it, but they find a really cool way to kind of tie everything together. And I think overall, the fact that this movie is rated R doesn't change the storytelling of the MCU. This isn't some Kang the Conqueror, Secret Wars, down the line shit. There is high stakes. There's TVA multiversal level stakes in the film, but it's not necessarily something that is essential per se to the overall storytelling. There's not some essential post-credit scene like a million Kangs gathering together. It's not like that, but I am completely okay with that. This movie gives me faith in the MCU's ability to tell an independent story. This makes me excited for one reason and worried for another. It worries me because this movie had 6 writing credits, which is, again, absolutely bat insane. Secondly, though, it does excite me for future, more out there MCU projects, right? Feige took a big swing with this movie, in my opinion, especially for the MCU audience. Streets are saying that Blade is going to be rated R, which would be absolutely huge. Again, the 6 writing credits, it does scare me because Blade has gone through a lot of rewrites and everything in between. This excites me for Midnight Suns. This excites me for the MCU taking swings for singular projects. Not everything needs to be tied to the overall, right? Deadpool and Wolverine was tied to the overall by mentioning the TVA. First time the TVA has been in a big Marvel movie, and that's it. That's really all the connection you need. So the R rating doesn't change the MCU forever. Rather, it opens doors for the MCU to take more swings. Another really interesting thing to talk about with Deadpool Wolverine is how they use the cameos, because a movie that you could definitely compare this to is, I definitely think people thought Multiverse of Madness was going to be what Deadpool Wolverine was like in a cameo sense. And I personally still like Multiverse of Madness a little bit more than Deadpool and Wolverine, and I didn't really mind that there wasn't that many cameos in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness because it focuses more on a character study of the psyche of Doctor Strange. Deadpool and Wolverine already has these romantic and honestly more depressing and devastating elements because of Logan, because of the Wolverine that we already know, and also the Deadpool that we already know. It doesn't have to focus on those things and uses cameos to the plot's advantage. Now, this makes me more excited because I didn't really like how the cameos were handled in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness as much as I love the film itself. It does make me excited for Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty because, you know, the streets have all sorts of rumors on these movies. Every week there's a new thing being said, but the general consensus is Secret Wars is about a bunch of variants of characters fighting our 616 universes, Avengers and team-ups and stuff like that, right? I genuinely do believe after Deadpool and Wolverine and seeing how these cameos were used, they weren't used in as much detail as I would have wanted, but they also fit all of this shit into a 2-hour and 8-minute movie, whereas Secret Wars is probably going to be 2 different parts with 2 movies that are 2 hours and 30 minutes long. And so there's a lot more time to work with in terms of Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty. After watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I can say that I am very interested to see how they handle the cameos, and I have more faith in the storytelling and the swings that Feige will take. But before I give you guys my final score on the movie, it is time. One of my favorite details on this popcorn bucket is how it says designed by Deadpool, and it says can also be used for popcorn. Before I get into the biggest pro of this popcorn bucket, I have to talk about the biggest design flaw. These job handles, they come off like pretty easily, and it's kind of annoying. And then also, I understand the ergonomical use of the flaps inside, but it's way harder to eat popcorn out of this than the Shy Halusi. I think this design is pretty damn cool, and I will say what I noticed after using the Wolvussy was the tongue is textured. Absolutely great detail. Feels awesome when you're going in for the popcorn. Overall, I give the Wolvussy about an 8 to 8.5 out of 10. And overall for Deadpool Wolverine, I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. Look out for more MCU and X-Men content coming in the next few days. And again, let me know you guys thought of Deadpool Wolverine in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.